You've already seen the title. We're going to talk about Roch Thériault, one of the most notorious criminals in Canada. Known as the father of the Anthill Kids cult, Roch puppeteered the lives of his followers, leading them and immersing them in his delusion of being the reincarnation of the prophet Moses. I'm going to try to relay the story as chronological as possible. Born as the second of 7 children on May 16, 1947, Roch was a bright, outgoing boy who loved learning. He was raised in Thetford Mines, and the town's local school only went up to the 7th grade, which is where his formal education came to a halt. This is when Roch started teaching himself the Old Testament of the Bible. He had a fairly normal childhood and nothing to complain about in his home situation, which isn't the case with most murderers I've heard about. As he grew, Roch became interested in various topics and seemed to be quite intelligent. He was often praised for it and developed a craving for attention. He found out that complaining about his childhood offered a great deal of sympathy. His personality, charismatic behavior, and proneness to showmanship helped him out in getting the attention he desired. It was very easy for him to make friends. He had a way of instilling trust into people. He also found spirituality to be very attractive. Thériault converted from Catholicism to the Seventh-day Adventist Church and was a very active member. When he was 20 years old, he married Francine Grenier, and over the next 3 years, she gave him 2 sons, Roch Sylvain and Francois. As a newly spiritual person, Roch started advocating for a healthy lifestyle, free of unhealthy food and tobacco. He also developed a new interest in medicine and taught himself everything he could about the human anatomy. This is when he becomes very interested in sex and sexuality, and this new hobby of his creates turbulence in his home life. Roch's healthy lifestyle comes to an end when he develops an affinity toward drinking, heavily. Using various excuses, he made frequent trips to Quebec City, where he met and engaged in sexual activity with numerous women. It was on one of these trips where he met Giselle, who became his mistress. Eventually, Francine, Roch's wife, found out about the affair and left him, while Roch kept seeing Giselle. Thériault developed a belief that the end of the world was near and that it would be brought on by the war of good against evil, and in the mid-70s he used his exceptional charismatic skills to begin to convince a group of people to leave their jobs and homes and join him in religious movement. All of these people, plus Roch, began hanging out at Giselle's apartment. Though most of the girls still living with their parents, the whole group would often spend the weekend crashing at Giselle's, on the couch, on the floor, wherever there was space. Thériault encouraged them all to drop out of college. After all, Christ was coming soon, so there wasn't much point to learning skills to get by in the world that was already doomed. Giselle would become jealous of the attention Roch was getting from the girls of the group, but would often console herself with Roch's desire to become a priest and his newly founded commitment to total sobriety, even though it wouldn't have taken much for Roch to seduce any one of the women. However, Roch's Adventist ministers began fearing the possibility that this group of rebellious young people was more attracted to Roch's personality than the teachings of their church. In 1977, he and his followers attended an Adventist retreat on Lake Rousseau, in the woods of Muskoka, Ontario. Here he met Gabrielle Lavallée and Yolande Gimbert, who joined his group. In fact, at one point during the retreat, Thériault went hiking by himself and climbed up on a rocky outcropping. He said he had a vision in which the sky was lit up with a white radiance, and the voice of God told him that the outcropping on which Roch was about to kneel was a holy place. This was the first incident of what would become the ruling element in the lives of those people who had taken to following Roch. He formed the cult in 1977 in Sainte Marie, Quebec, with the goal to form a commune where people would freely listen to his motivational speeches, live in unity and equality, and be free of sin. He prohibited the group from remaining in contact with their families and with the Seventh-day Adventist Church, as this was against his cult's values of freedom, which, if you ask me, is a bit contradictory, because if you preach about freedom and whatnot, what justifies these ridiculous prohibitions? Although I am talking about a psychotic cult leader, so all logic falls in the water, I guess. Anyway, Roch's fear of the end of the world grew, claiming that God had warned him that it would come in February 1977, and used the commune to prepare for it.
Car sa puissance de sa colère va tout détruire ce que votre œil peut voir maintenant.
In 1978, in preparation, Thériault moved his commune by hiking to a mountainside he called Eternal Mountain, where he claimed they could all be saved.
So that's why, he had a good reason to make us believe that, we are special and we have to believe that, and we're the lucky one who will be saved.
There, he made the commune build their town, while he relaxed comparing them to ants working in an anthill, naming the group the Anthill Kids. In February 1979, when the apocalypse did not occur, people started questioning his wisdom, but he defended himself, saying that time on Earth and God's world were not parallel, and that therefore it was a miscalculation. Roch started thinking about expanding his community, and in addition to taking Giselle as his wife, he also married and impregnated all of the women in the commune, fathering over 20 children with 9 members. The cult grew to a number of 40 members, and they were all made to wear identical tunics to represent equality and devotion. Following the cult's formation, Roch started drinking again, and began moving away from being a motivational leader as his drinking problem worsened. He became completely in charge of his followers' lives and even more irrational in his beliefs.
What he built around us is the worst jail that could ever exist, because we don't see the bars. It's a psychological jail.
Members were not allowed to speak to each other when he was not present, nor were they allowed to have sex with each other without his permission. Thériault used his charismatic talents to cover for his increasingly abusive and erratic behavior, and none of the other members questioned his judgment or openly blamed him for any physical, mental, or emotional damage. He began to inflict punishments on followers that he considered to be straying by spying on them and claiming that God told him what they did. If a person wished to leave the commune, Roch would hit them with either a belt or a hammer, suspend them from the ceiling, pluck each of their body hairs individually, and perform numerous other disgusting actions. The Anthill Kids raised money for living by selling baked goods, and members who did not bring enough money were also punished. Over time, Thériault's punishments became increasingly extreme and violent, including making members break their own legs with sledgehammers, sit on lit stoves, shoot each other in the shoulders, and eat dead mice and feces. A follower would sometimes be asked to cut off another follower's toes with wire cutters to prove loyalty. The abuse extended to the cult's children who were sexually abused, held over fires, or nailed to trees while other children threw stones at them. One of Thériault's wives left a newborn child outside to die in freezing temperature just to keep it away from the abuse. Roch attempted to backtrack to the original religious mission of the commune, beginning to strongly believe in purifying his followers and ridding them of their sins through abusive purification sessions where the members would be completely nude as he whipped and beat them. He claimed to be a holy being and started performing unnecessary amateur surgical operations on sick members to demonstrate his healing powers. These surgeries included injecting a 94% ethanol solution into stomachs or performing circumcisions on the children and adults in the group. In 1987, social workers removed 17 of the children from the commune. However, Thériault served only 2 years in jail for his abusive acts. His followers, who were now deeply under his spell, not only held him blameless for his violent and abusive acts, but were to a degree grateful and wrote Roch letters expressing how they feel. One such letter was written by Solange Boilard, and I'm going to read it to you now. Good day, Moses, my master. I would have liked to have talked to you yesterday evening, but I think it's preferable to write these things down rather than saying them for fear of talking too much. I'm going to talk to you about the last fit of anger that your master exercised through you. I really believe that what you did doesn't come from you, but from someone much higher. For my part, I really believe that you were possessed by a very powerful spirit. That's what I saw in what you did. The throwing of the knife, the rifle shot, and the harm done to Mommy. My eyes saw things that went beyond them. My body is very afraid of all these things. I understand it very well because of the law of death in which it exists. But within myself I am well. I am very well, and very happy to belong to a real master, who himself belongs to the only real master of life. Here you can clearly see how brainwashed these people were. This is one of multiple letters that his followers wrote to him. In the fall of 1988, Solange had begun to feel ill, and Thériault convinced her that there was something wrong with her liver, and that there would have to be an operation. One afternoon, he got exceedingly drunk. He started strangling the women, asking if they knew that their breath belonged to him. Then he turned to Solange and said, "Rachel, are you ready? I'm going to treat you tonight." Leading them to the bakery, he cleared off the table and Solange undressed herself and laid down. Thériault performed another amateur surgery without anesthesia. He laid her naked on a table and punched in her stomach, then proceeded to perform a crude enema with molasses and olive oil. He cut open her abdomen with a knife and ripped off part of her intestines with his bare hands. Thériault made another member, Gabrielle Lavallée, stitch her up using a needle and a thread, and had the other women shove a tube down her throat and blow through it. Unsurprisingly, Boilard died the next day from the damage inflicted by the procedures. Claiming to have the power of resurrection, he tried to resurrect her in a completely sick way, which I cannot mention on here. And when Boilard inevitably did not return to life, her corpse was buried a short distance from the Anthill Kids commune. Gabrielle Lavallée herself underwent harsh treatment at the Ontario commune during the late 1980s, suffering welding torch burns to her genitals, a hypodermic needle breaking off in her back, and even 8 of her teeth being forcibly removed. Lavallée attempted to escape from the commune after suffering even worse abuse, but upon her unsuccessful escape, he removed one of her fingers with wire cutters, pinned her hands to a wooden table with a hunting knife, and then used a chainsaw to amputate her entire arm. In 1989, Thériault was arrested for assault after Gabrielle Lavallée had fled the commune again and contacted authorities, effectively dissolving the Anthill Kids. Provincial authorities had long held suspicions against Thériault's cult due to the particularly primitive living conditions of his membership. But because the commune was officially registered as a church, officials were legally unable to investigate the adults and could not do much except ensure the welfare of the children. Thériault was found guilty of assault for the amputation of Lavallée's arm and received a sentence of 12 years imprisonment. The vast majority of the cult's followers abandoned Thériault after his arrest, but during his imprisonment, he fathered another 4 children with remaining female members during his conjugal visits. Lavallée's report allowed further investigations into Thériault's actions, exposing the wider abuses at the commune and Solange Boilard's murder. In 1993, Thériault pleaded guilty to second-degree murder for the death of Solange Boilard and was sentenced to life imprisonment. In the year 2000, Roch was transferred to Dorchester Penitentiary, a medium-security prison in Dorchester, New Brunswick. In 2002, Thériault was rejected for parole and he was considered too high of a risk to reoffend, and he never applied again. The details of murder, widespread torture, and many forms of emotional and sexual abuse came out later through newspaper articles and a 1993 book, Savage Messiah, as well as a 2002 TV movie of the same name. His life finally came to an end in 2009 when Roch, then 63 years old, was murdered by his cellmate at Dorchester Penitentiary. I know we shouldn't speak ill of the dead, but I mean, good riddance. I feel so bad for the people that this monster of a man abused and toyed with. I hope their life significantly improved after Roch's imprisonment. I hope they went to therapy and cleansed themselves of the years and years of torture they endured. This was a very difficult topic to do research on because there was just so much I couldn't fit into this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day and stay safe out there. Goodbye, Darklings.